Who's there?
Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself.
Long live the king.
Bernardo?
He.
Come most carefully upon your hour.
Who is the first word? And when Shakespeare's at his best, it's not just the first idea, but the first word sometimes, as in Macbeth and Othello and others we'll find. But this play, who's there, uh, is Shakespeare's ubiquitous concern, identity. So who's there? It's also a question too. And by the way, the word question in this play occurs 17 times more than anywhere else. And we're in a world that is disturbing and full of question. Who's there? Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself is an interesting way of identifying or not identifying yourself by unfolding like you are a text. And then, long live the king. Whoa, that's a panicked, paranoid, knee-jerk reaction. It's like if you're wearing Eastern Indian garb to the airport and the TSA pulls you over and they've got guns, and you better say something like, God bless America. Well, long live the king. Bernardo, recognized. And Bernardo says, he, saying, yes, it's me, but in the third person. So again, identity is an issue. And in that case, sort of split. You come most carefully upon your hour. Well, if you were expected right then, what was the paranoia all about and the panic? Well, that's the abrupt start to this week and next week's play, Hamlet. So welcome all to Shakespeare Illuminated, where we seek to shed light on each of Shakespeare's plays. My name's Michael, and I'm a Shakespeareaholic. Oh, thank you. Michael Delahoyde, that is. The University of Michigan gave me a doctorate in early English literature, and I've been an instructor and professor of English ever since. Our mission here is to appreciate the brilliance of Shakespeare's plays, and when considering the playwright's plots and characters and sometimes baffling passages, how can we understand his work better? Maybe through consideration of the Shakespeare Authorship Question. That is, if we stop parroting the absurd notion that the works were written by the Stratfordian grain merchant Shakespeare, instead by Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, using the pen name Shakespeare, such as the so-called Oxfordian perspective. Are the Shakespeare works better illuminated? Spoiler alert, yup. So please note, when I refer to Oxford, it's usually in a biographical context. When I say Shakespeare, I always mean Oxford, and probably as the playwright. So translate that in your mind. When I refer to the grain merchant of Stratford, I'll say Shakespeare as it was recorded in Stratford under various spellings, but with the short A, Shakespeare. But he won't come up often. The Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship's website, shakespeareoxfordfellowship.org, can inform you much more about this Oxfordian perspective, as can my own site, michaeldelahoyde.org. You want to be careful how you handle the Oxfordian information given in this series or on either of the websites. Know that the issue of the Shakespeare authorship is hotly contested and too typically meets with rage and retaliation, especially in schools and colleges, where with religious intensity, it's even labeled a heresy. We don't want anyone flunking English because of someone else being ill-informed or intolerant. But once this opens up to you, you can have a renaissance. We're going to explore now what has been considered the best work from the best writer ever. So that makes it the best thing ever. Most of us have seen it or read it, but maybe it's been a while for you. So to recap, it's the tragedy / delight of a young man who feels that people are callous wretches, idiotic wastes, or murderous two-faced swine. Basically my treatise on humanity. Well, actually closer to the Earl of Oxford's autobiography, as we'll see. Hamlet, the brooding prince of Denmark, gets a visit from his dead dad's ghost, who details his murder by Hamlet's uncle, Claudius. Claudius promptly married Hamlet's freshly widowed mom, Gertrude, and assumes the throne. Hamlet runs circles around all the other characters intellectually, philosophically, and artistically, and we'll appreciate here many of his in-jokes. But he's expected to take on the identity that really does not fit his true self, that of a revengeful action hero. Hamlet concocts a plan that involves pretending to be mad and putting on a play to catch the conscience of the king. After which Hamlet accidentally kills his girlfriend Ophelia's dad, drives her to actual madness, and sets off a chain reaction of poisonings and stabbings and poison stabbings. And by the end, the stage is littered with corpses. Any questions? Well, the chat is open, but if you do have a more formal question, you can hit the Q&A button you should be seeing down below. If I do not address these during the show, stick around for a Q&A following today's episode. Here's some general questions we want to try addressing. Understand this time, though, that such questions have been argued over for centuries and remain unresolved. In Hamlet, we exist in a world of frustrating uncertainty. Nevertheless, what exactly is the ghost, and where is it from? Why does Hamlet wait so long to act? What drives Ophelia insane? And what does Hamlet mean with his last words? All right. The readiness is all. So, after the first lines that you just saw, Horatio, Hamlet's friend and a student, arrives and speaks with these guards who say, we saw something really weird and you're a scholar, so let us tell you. And they sit down, and within a few lines later, forget it, no narration, the ghost appears again, and Horatio is asked to try to speak to it. Because I guess, he's a student and understands ghost language or something. The question might arise that why aren't they following military protocols about this and instead just chatting among themselves? But for some reason, they try to address the ghost and it disappears. It is offended, says somebody. And you wonder, why is it offended? Well, maybe it's just time to go away. But in the previous line, someone had used the oath by heaven, and it's speculated that maybe the word heaven is a problem for this ghost. So you don't really know where this ghost is from. Interestingly, as in Macbeth, the supernatural is witnessed by others. It would be really handy if this were just a figment of Hamlet's imagination and his projection and the rest, but you got other witnesses that there really was some kind of phenomenon there. But we never really have a resolution. It's another question. Where does this ghost come from? More on that later. Horatio also explains another situation politically, where in the previous generation, Fortinbras fought old Hamlet, who the ghost looks like, the current Hamlet's father, and older Hamlet won some lands there, and we're a little bit worried about a vengeful younger Fortinbras now in the next generation. And Claudius would be worried about this too. In the second scene of the first act, we are at court, and Claudius, now the king, Hamlet's uncle, is giving a speech to everybody, saying that on the one hand, we are in mourning for my dead brother, but on the other hand, we're celebrating this new marriage. And he talks about this as literally being two-faced. The fact that some would call the relationship incest is a problem because Elizabeth's father, Henry VIII, in his divorce and marriage, there had to be some special ceremonial arrangements there and permissions given, because marrying your dead brother's wife, in that case, it would have been Catherine of Aragon, you need a state ceremonial purification ritual. So it's not just Hamlet having a fit about all of this. Well, Claudius addresses the Fortinbras problem too, and he thinks, I know, I'll write to the uncle, and the uncle can always stop a hot-headed nephew from getting revenge. Whoa, well, there's a little projection from him, too. Eventually, we turn to Hamlet, and we get Hamlet's first lines and his interactions with the king and the queen. Note that Hamlet's first lines are kind of wise-ass comments and the kind of stuff that drives parents, especially step-parents, crazy. But also listen to what Claudius has to say and these subtle, friendly ways, about 7 ways he insults Hamlet in this next scene.
But now, my cousin Hamlet and my son.
A little more than kin and less than kind.
How is it that the clouds still hang on you?
Not so, my lord. I am too much i'th the sun.
Good Hamlet, cast thy nighted colour off, and let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark. Do not forever with thy veiled lids seek for thy noble father in the dust. Thou know'st 'tis common. All that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity.
Aye, madam, it is common.
But if it be, why seems it so particular with thee?
Seems, madam, nay, it is. I know not seems. 'Tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath, no, nor the fruitful river in the eye, nor the dejected haviour of the visage, together with all forms, moods, shapes of grief that can denote me truly. These indeed seem, for they are actions that a man might play. But I have that within which passeth show, these but the trappings and the suits of woe.
'Tis sweet and commendable in your nature, Hamlet, to give these mourning duties to your father, but you must know, your father lost a father, that father lost his, and the survivor bound in filial obligation for some term to do obsequious sorrow. But to persevere in obstinate condolement is a course of impious stubbornness. 'Tis unmanly grief. It shows a will most incorrect to heaven, a heart unfortified, a mind impatient, an understanding simple and unschooled. For what we know must be and is as common as the most vulgar thing to sense. Who are we, in our peevish opposition, to take it to heart? Fie! 'Tis a fault to heaven, a fault against the dead, a fault to nature, to reason most absurd, whose common theme is death of fathers, and who still hath cried from the first course till he that died today, this must be so. We pray you, throw to earth this unprevailing woe, and think of us as of a father. For let the world take note, you are the most immediate to our throne, and with no less nobility of love than that which dearest father bears his son, do I impart toward you. For your intent in going back to school in Wittenberg, it is most retrograde to our desire. We beseech you, bend you to remain here in the cheer and comfort of our eye, our chiefest courtier, cousin, and our son.
Let not thy mother lose her prayers, Hamlet. I pray thee, stay with us. Go not to Wittenberg.
I shall in all my best obey you, madam.
All right, now let's take a step back here and consider the biographical or autobiographical possibilities. The Earl of Oxford was lost his father, the 16th Earl, under somewhat mysterious circumstances, and he was considered, according to this new system that they set up, too young to inherit his estates. So he became a ward of the court instead. and his eventual father-in-law, William Cecil Lord Burleigh, was the head of the Court of Wards. And it was a lucrative operation for the court and anybody involved in robbing these young orphaned young men and charging them outrageously for their new shoes and their dancing lessons and their tutors and all the rest. One enemy that Oxford had perpetually at court was the Earl of Leicester, the on-again, off-again boyfriend of Queen Elizabeth. And he benefited financially tremendously, in addition to Lord Burleigh, the eventual Lord Burleigh, according to this arrangement, this financial violence. So Claudius as Leicester, maybe there are similarities there as him being the villain. As for the Queen, well, do we have Elizabeth? I don't know. She's a shadowy figure. Oxford's brother-in-law, Peregrine Bertie, Lord Willoughby, did go to visit Elsinore, the court that we are at here, and it's suggested that any details that Oxford seems to know might have come from him, or there are other possibilities too. But there is some real inside knowledge, like the Danish word dansker is the Danish word meaning Dane, and it's pretty unique and not generally known. And there are other details. I'd also like to hear, before we plunge back in, say a few of the general words about this play. It is considered by even Stratfordians and traditionalists to have something special in it that relates specifically to Shakespeare, the author. It's more personal, more potentially illuminating, says one critic. It's got some peculiar, intimate relation to the creator, another critic says. In some sense or other, quote, Hamlet's problem must have been Shakespeare's. Well, this makes a lot of sense when we're considering the Oxfordian perspective. This one has a Stationer's Register reference in 1602. And there's a so-called bad quarto that comes out in 1603, another good quarto that comes out in 1604, and then the version that we have in the first folio in 1623. The problem is with the traditional attempt to date this play late, that there are references to Hamlet and performances of Hamlet, and even a reference to, quote, whole Hamlets, I should say handfuls of tragical speeches, and that's from 1589. But little Willie Shakespeare isn't up for creating Hamlet in any version by that time. So, out of desperation, the traditional Shakespeareans say, well, maybe there was an Hamlet, an original Hamlet. And of course, Shakespeare steals everything that he's got. But a lot of us think, no, he rewrites and rewrites his own stuff again and again until it becomes a masterpiece. So the Hamlet, maybe Thomas Kidd may have written it. Yeah, because Thomas Kidd's known for writing these bombastic tragedies for the stage. Like what? Well, like the Spanish tragedy. The Spanish tragedy. It's kind of Shakespearean, actually, but it's a big bombastic, and we don't know that he wrote it, and nothing connects him to it, but he probably did, because he would write big bombastic tragedies. Like what? Well, like the Hamlet, for example. Well, how do we know he wrote that? Well, because he was known for writing tragedies, like the Spanish tragedy, for example. Yeah, and how... All right, enough of that. Now, what you'll also be told is that the play was written out of Shakespeare's despair over the death of his son, Hamnet, N-E-T. named after the neighbor Hamnet Sadler. But it's close to Hamlet, so you can see how the despair would be part of the play. So what happened was that Will Shakespeare was so despairing over the death of his young son that, according to the traditional forced timeline, he wrote one or two hilarious comedies and then buckled down to write the story of a son whose father is dead. So you see how that. All right. Anyway, I mentioned the Bad Quarto in 1603 comes out, and it's thought to be an edition that we've gotten some actors in who were involved in the production, and they didn't quite remember parts except for like Second Soldier. They got that right. But they were in the wings when Hamlet was on, and they try to remember his speech. And here's one of them from the Bad Quarto. To be or not to be. Aye, there's the point. To die, to sleep. Is that all? Aye, all. No, to sleep, to dream. Aye, merry. There it goes. And so on. Well, it doesn't really sound very Shakespearean. One last general point is that Hamlet is supposedly the most quoted figure in Western culture after Jesus. So back we go into the play. Hamlet gives a first soliloquy, and most of them are about death. This first one, after the scene we just saw, he asks, "Oh, that this too sallied, or sullied, or solid," we don't know, different versions. "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt." And that's not really a very responsible attitude about wanting to die. Just like, soap opera, beautiful death where I just kind of evaporate. That would be nice. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. Ah, darn. I was going to commit suicide, but God said I'm not supposed to. Well, Hamlet will grow much more sophisticated about this, and he'll address this issue of life and death and impulses and consciousness and wanting out of the pain in a much more mature way as he matures throughout the play. And Roger Strittmatter has pointed out that there's a connection between this idea and the Geneva Bible that is traced to the Earl of Oxford in the wisdom of Solomon: "Seek not death in the error of your life, destroy not yourself through the works of your own hands." Well, in the next few moments, after he ruminates for a while about the difficulty of having a broken heart and not being able to talk about it, his friend Horatio meets him. And here in this next scene is their greeting to each other. And also Horatio politely reporting about the appearance of the ghost, and Hamlet being skeptical about it. So here is that scene.
Hail to your lordship.
I'm glad to see you well. Horatio, why'd you forget myself?
The same, my lord, and your poor servant ever.
Sir, my good friend, I'll change that name with you. And what make you from Wittenberg, Horatio?
My lord, I came to see your father's funeral.
I pray thee do not mock me, fellow student. I think what to see my mother's wedding.
Indeed, my lord, it followed hard upon.
Thrift, Horatio. A funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables. Would I had met my dearest foe in heaven, or ever I had seen that day, Horatio. My father. Methinks I see my father.
Where, my lord?
In my mind's eye, Horatio.
I saw him once. He was a goodly king.
He was a man. Take him for all in all. I shall not look upon his like again.
My lord, I think I saw him yesternight.
Saw? Who?
My lord, the king, your father.
The king, my father.
Season your admiration for a while with an attent ear, till I may deliver upon witness of these gentlemen this marvel to you.
Sir love, let me hear.
2 nights together had these gentlemen, Marcellus and Bernardo, on their watch in the dead waste and middle of the night, been thus encountered. A figure like your father, armed at point exactly, cap a pie, appears before them, and with solemn march goes slow and stately by them. Thrice he walked by their oppressed and fear-surprised eyes, and I with them the 3rd night kept the watch, whereas they had delivered both in time, form of the thing, each word made good and true, the apparition comes. I knew your father. These hands are not more like.
Did you not speak to it?
I did, my lord, but answer made it none. Yet once methought it lifted up its head and did address itself to motion, like as it would speak. But even then the morning cock crew loud, and at the sound it shrunk in haste away and vanished from our sight.
It's very strange.
As I do live, my honored lord, 'tis true. And we did think it writ down in our duty to let you know of it.
Indeed. Indeed, sirs. But this troubles me. Hold you the watch tonight?
We do, my lord.
Armed, say you?
Armed, my lord.
From top to toe?
My lord, from head to foot.
Then saw you not his face?
Oh, yes, my lord. He wore his beaver up.
What looked he frowningly?
A countenance more in sorrow than in anger.
Pale or red?
Yea, very pale.
And fixed his eyes upon you?
Most constantly.
I would I had been there.
It would have much amazed you.
Very like, very like. Stayed it long?
Not when I saw it.
His beard was grizzled, no?
It was, as I have seen it in his life, a sable silvered.
I will watch tonight.
Notice that when they introduce themselves to each other, Horatio declares himself, "Your poor servant ever." And Hamlet says, "Sir, my good friend, I'll change that name with you." Well, what's the name? The sense is that, oh, it's an honor to be in your presence. Oh, no, the greater honor is mine. You're like, oh, no, please. But the words are, I'll change that name with you. Well, what's the name? It's not servant. That's a function or a position or something. I'll change that name with you. What's the name? Well, the other word in there that's a name is ever, evere, or the anagram for Vere. Then Hamlet grills Horatio about the appearance of this ghost. And it comes down to, was his beard grizzled, right? And Horatio says, without contradicting Hamlet, it was, as I've seen it in his life, sable silvered. And we all pass by that because we're thinking, okay, grizzled sable, what are you, silvered, it's like a salt and pepper look. But it's 2 different things, isn't it? In terms of texture, his beard was grizzled. That doesn't sound like a sable silvered. So it's as if Hamlet set up a trap and Horatio's just saying, yeah. But he says, well, not quite. And immediately Hamlet says, I will watch tonight. So Horatio passed the test, and there is something to this. In the next scene, we get this god-awful family of Polonius, the court advisor, and his son Laertes, who's going to take off to be a student, and the daughter Ophelia, who is Hamlet's girlfriend, apparently. Ophelia in Greek can mean a source of gain. And it's been established and then backpedaled that Polonius works as the character representing and satirizing William Cecil Lord Burleigh, who, as I said, was the Earl of Oxford's protector, the head of the Court of Wards. And eventually, when he pushed hard enough politically, the father-in-law, because his daughter Anne Cecil was much younger than Oxford and ended up being his wife somehow. So Ophelia, a source of gain, would have been a handy little reference to Lord Burleigh pushing this marriage so that his family is socially climbing. But Ophelia, the philia part, like bibliophile and philosophy, meaning love, philosophy, love of wisdom. Ophelia might mean the lover of O, and O always Oxford likes to identify with the O, the not, the nothing that he unfortunately has largely become. Well, Polonius gives a lot of advice here, and this bit is pretty famous. And it's handy because you can extract little adages from this sequence and think that they're inspirational. And you get a little tape and you put it up on your mirror and you can inspire yourself. But beware. So here's what Polonius says to his son Laertes when Laertes is about to take off on his voyage.
There, my blessings with thee, and these few precepts in thy memory see thy character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast, and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel. But do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new-hatched, unfledged courage. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bet that the opposed may beware of thee. Give each man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy. Rich, not gaudy. For the apparel oft proclaims the man, and they in France of the best rank and station, or of a most select and generous, chief in that. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. The loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thy own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man.
Sanctimonious. Oh my. Oh, hello. Um, well, yeah, some of that might sound pretty good, but realize it's the source. So if you're going to extract something and pin it up for your inspiration and then write William Shakespeare underneath, beware, this is coming from this character. And he's basically saying, twist yourself into knots and despite your natural inclinations and instincts, obey these 114 rules. And oh, just be yourself. Well, which self that you fashioned here? So Polonius, as a caricature of William Cecil Lord Burleigh, this really works. This is, a pretty smoking gun here that Cecil did have a set of precepts, he called them, for his son. The problem is this wasn't made public or published until the later 1600s. So how would Shakespeare get to know this unless he was someone in the household and at dinner time had to put up with this sanctimony night after night? Good Lord. And here are some of the precepts from Lord Burleigh that seem to be paralleled, mocked, satirized by Shakespeare in the form of Polonius's advice. Suffer not thy sons to cross the Alps, for they shall learn nothing there but pride, blasphemy, and atheism. And if by travel they get few broken languages, they shall profit them nothing more than to have one meat served up in diverse dishes. Beware of being surety for thy best friends. He that payeth another man's debts seeketh his own decay. Be sure to keep some great man thy friend, but trouble him not with trifles. Compliment him often with many yet small gifts. Towards thy superiors be humble yet generous, with thine equals familiar yet respectful. Trust. Blah, 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 blah. I can't take anymore. Now, in the earliest version that we have published of Hamlet in the Quarto, the character Polonius is named Corambus. And Burleigh's motto that he adopted was cor unum via uno, meaning one heart, one way. Well, cor for heart, ambus, like in ambiguity or ambidextrous, means more like doubled. So he's double dealing or double-hearted or two-faced. And in fact, the term double heart occurs in Golding's translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses, which a lot of us suspect was actually an exercise in translation by the young Earl of Oxford, and he absorbed so much from that Ovid's Metamorphoses became Shakespeare's favorite book. Well, maybe cor ambus was too close to recognition here. So in the later version, the name gets changed to Polonius. But Oxford still gets away with it because Polus and Pondus seem to have been nicknames for William Cecil Lord Burleigh at the court too. All right. Well, Laertes is really interested and concerned about what Ophelia is doing with her feminine O. And the minute he leaves, Polonius asks Ophelia, oh, what did he say? And who's saying what about who? And just the spy network here is suffocating. Polonius says, beware of Hamlet. You're too far below him. And I know young men and their intentions are evil. And in the end, Ophelia says, I shall obey, my lord. And that's going to be pretty much it for her. All right. At night, Hamlet and the others are out, and the ghost appears. And Hamlet, in spite of his friends saying, this is too weird and we're worried about you falling off the brink, off a cliff, but, you know, off the brink too, here, don't follow him. But Hamlet insists he's got to find out what this ghost has to say. So here is Act 1, Scene 5, Hamlet and apparently his father's ghost.
Now, Hamlet, hear. 'Tis given out that, sleeping in my orchard, a serpent stung me. So the whole heir of Denmark is by a forged process of my death, rankly abused. But know, thou noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown.
My prophetic soul, my uncle.
Aye, that incestuous, that adulterate beast, with witchcraft of his wit, with traitorous gifts, O wicked wit, and gifts that have the power so to seduce, won to his shameful lust the will of my most seeming virtuous queen. But virtue as it never will be moved, though lewdness caught it in a shape of heaven, so lust, though to a radiant angel linked, will sate itself in a celestial bed, and prey on garbage. But soft, methinks I scent the morning air. Brief let me be, sleeping within my orchard, my custom always of the afternoon. Upon my secure hour thy uncle stole, with juice of cursed Hebnon in a vial, and in the porches of my ears did pour the leprous distilment, whose effect holds such an enmity with blood of man, that swift as quicksilver courses through the natural gates and alleys of the body, and with a sudden vigour doth posset and curd like eager droppings into milk the thin and wholesome blood. So did it mine, and a most instant tetter barked about most Lazarite with a vile and loathsome crust all my smooth body. Thus was I, sleeping, by a brother's hand, of life, of crown, of queen, at once dispatched, cut off even in the blossoms of my sin, unhouselled, disappointed, unannealed, no reckoning made, but sent to my account with all my imperfections on my head. Oh, horrible, oh, horrible, most horrible! If thou hast nature in thee, bear it not, let not the royal bed of Denmark be a couch for luxury and damned incest. But howsoe'er thou pursuest this act, taint not thy mind, nor let thy soul contrive against thy mother aught. Leave her to heaven, and to those thorns that in her bosom lodge, to prick and sting her. Fare thee well at once. The glowworm shows the matin to be near, and gins to pale his uneffectual fire. Adieu, adieu, adieu. Remember me.
Well, purgatory sounds a lot like hell, so we don't know where this ghost is from. And it's the religious question, because is Elizabethan England supposed to believe in purgatory? And are we supposed to believe that this is the ghost of the father, or are we being tricked by some demon? It's a worry that murder is most foul, as in the best it is. Even the best murders are bad. So, Hamlet, we need you to murder. That's bizarre. Also, you're not supposed to worry about your mother. That's another matter. Your job is to revenge my death against the uncle. And yet, how much of that narration is all about obsessing about the incest and the mother? So there's a kind of a double standard there. Ultimately, Hamlet is expected now to be an action hero, and it's a role that just does not suit him. He is an artist, a philosopher, a thinker, a dramatist, a writer. He's like everything, but not a killer. And aside from that, too, he gets blamed for not just acting like this is some video game. They wiped out your entire family. Now you must. That's it. That's the premise. So Laurence Olivier's film of Hamlet from, nearly 100 years ago, begins with a quotation that he pulls out of the text, and he gives us that. It's very deep. And then he says, and this is not in Shakespeare, of course, this is the tragedy of a man who could not make up his mind. Well, thank you for deciding what this play is all about, but what is it that he should have made up his mind about from the start? Well, his ghost daddy said kill. Why does he even have to think about it? You just do it. When you have a dream about Elvis's dog telling kill all your neighbors, like, why are you even asking? It's Elvis's dog. Just do it. So I am not having a lot of tolerance for people saying Hamlet should have, instead of thinking it through and looking for more evidence than a weird ghost at night where we don't know his origins and so on. All right. Well, afterwards, Hamlet ruminates about this charge that he's given. And as he said in the scene, oh, my prophetic soul, he kind of suspected this all along and got confirmation by this ghost, which might be even more worrisome, because is the ghost real or a projection of his suspicions? But he says, okay, now I've got enough to go on. Now to my promise. Promises the ghost he will do this. But now to my promise. What about now to my action? Why is it not to the world of blood? And instead, it's more like the words that I have. I'm going to write this down in the tablet of my mind. One may smile and be a villain, he says. It's a lovely line for especially any of us who've had jobs in higher ed. And he's going to put on an antic disposition, he tells the others. So realize that I'm going to act a little crazy now, but it's all a strategy, so I can be dismissed by others and yet be carefully watching what goes on there. He says, the time is out of joint. And possibly the time frame, as we see here and in other plays, is a little bit out of joint. It's kind of odd, but more importantly, he says, oh, cursed spite. The time is out of joint, oh, cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. That ever I was born to set it right. That ever I was born to set it right, or again, the anagram, Vere, I was born. So again, Hamlet's called upon to play a role here, but it's some kind of vigilante notion that really shouldn't quite match with his actual character and talents. At the beginning of Act 2, Polonius is interviewing and instructing a spy who's going to spy on Polonius's son Laertes, who's abroad in France. And he micromanages this guy, and it's pretty sleazy. Here's what you could do. You could go to like the pub and say, I heard this guy is kind of like, he likes the prostitutes kind of a lot, and he likes to gamble, and what do you know about that? And the spy even says, you really want me to go that far and sully this guy's name? And yeah, well, you can go so far as that. And also, and then at a certain point, Polonius says, oh, wait, what was I saying? Where was I? And it seems like it comes off as a senior moment that he can't remember what he was going to say. And the spy says, you were right at the point where you said, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yes, I was saying, blah, blah. And back to the instructions. Well, was that a senior moment, or was it a test? Just like Hamlet gave to Horatio. Where was I again? And the guy passes the test saying, you were saying this. So I wasn't drifting off. I was paying attention. Oh, okay. And the nervous matter for me is that I don't like to see overlap between Hamlet and Polonius, because I want them to be just polar opposites. But in that tactic, it's a little uncomfortable. Ophelia comes in. She's had a scene with Hamlet where he was acting like totally weird, and she reports to Daddy. And so, okay, well, it must be that he's crazy because he's so in love with you, and that's going to be his theory that he's going to push throughout the play. And then we find that Claudius has sent for two old friends of Hamlet's, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And they are the consummate brown-nosers. We both obey, and we give ourselves up to you. Yours truly, your obsequious toadies, my lord. And they will spy on Hamlet and report back to Claudius about what's going on there. Well, Polonius then decides he's got to talk to the king and queen about what's happening with Ophelia, and especially with Hamlet. And so we get this annoying scene of Polonius addressing them.
My liege and madam, to expostulate what majesty should be, what duty is, why day is day, night, night, and time is time, were nothing but to waste night, day, and time. Therefore, since brevity is the soul of wit, and tediousness the limbs and outward flourishes, I will be brief. Your noble son is mad. Mad, call I it. For to define true madness, what is't but to be nothing else but mad? But let that go.
More matter with less art?
Madam, I swear I use no art at all. That he is mad, 'tis true. 'Tis true, 'tis pity, and pity 'tis true. A foolish figure, but farewell it, for I will use no art. Mad, let us grant him then. And now remains that we find out the cause of this effect, or rather say, the cause of this defect, for this effect defective comes by cause. Thus it remains, and the remainder thus. Perpend. I have a daughter, have while she is mine, who in her duty and obedience mark hath given me this. Now gather and surmise. To the celestial and my soul's idol, the most beautified Ophelia. That's an ill phrase, a vile phrase. Beautified is a vile phrase. But you shall hear thus. In her excellent white bosom these, etc.
Came this from Hamlet to her?
Good madam, stay a while. I will be faithful. Doubt thou the stars are fire. Doubt that the sun doth move. Doubt truth to be a liar. But never doubt I love. Oh, dear Ophelia, I am ill at these numbers. I have not art to reckon my groans, but that I love thee best, oh, most best, believe it. Adieu. Thine, evermore, most dear lady, whilst this machine is to him. This in obedience hath my daughter shown me, and more above hath his solicitings as they fell out by time, by means and place, all given to mine ear.
First, you want to slap your head if you've ever been at any meeting whatsoever and have heard somebody say, I think we all realize we don't have a lot of time this afternoon. I know everybody is blah, blah, blah. And so I'm going to get right to it here and summarize what I'm about to say in the shortest amount of time. But just shut up and get to it. Good God. Secondly, his daughter, maybe in obedience, gave him that love letter and poem from Hamlet. But my suspicion is that he went through her underwear drawer and he's just saying that. Who knows? In any case, he and Claudius are going to decide to use Ophelia as bait and maybe find another way to spy on Hamlet and hide behind the tapestry and on with the spying and such. But pretty much immediately after this, Polonius encounters Hamlet and tries to feel him out about certain matters. This is one of those delightful scenes where Hamlet just runs the rings about every other character. So here's Polonius and Hamlet, Act 2.
How does my good Lord Hamlet?
Well, God a mercy.
Do you know me, my lord?
Excellent, excellent, well. You are a fishmonger.
Not I, my lord.
Then I would you were so honest a man.
Honest, my lord?
Aye, sir. To be honest as this world goes is to be one man picked out of 10,000.
That's very true, my lord.
For if the sun breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion, have you a daughter?
I have, my lord.
Let her not walk if the sun. Conception is a blessing, but not as your daughter may conceive. Friend, look to it.
How say you by that? Still harping on my daughter. Yet he knew me not at first, and said I was a fishmonger. It's gone too far. Far gone. And truly, in my youth, I suffered much extremity for love. Very near this. I'll speak to him again. What read you, my lord?
Words. Words. Words.
What is the matter, my lord?
Between who?
I mean the matter that you read, my lord.
Oh, slander, sir. For the satirical rogue says here that old men have grey beards, that their faces are wrinkled, their eyes purging thick amber and plum tree gum, and that they have a plentiful lack of wit, altogether with most weak hams, all which, sir, though I most powerfully and potently believe, yet I hold it not honesty to have it thus set down. For you yourself, sir, should be old as I am, if like a crab you could go backward.
Though this be madness, yet there is method in't. Will you walk out of the air, my lord?
Into my grave?
Indeed, that is out of the air. How pregnant sometimes his replies are. Happiness that often madness hits on, which reason and sanity could not so prosperously be delivered of. I will leave him and suddenly contrive the means of meeting between him and my daughter. My honourable lord, I would most humbly take my leave of you.
You cannot, sir, take from me anything that I will more willingly part withal, except my life. Except my life. Except my life!
Fare you well, my lord.
These tedious old fools.
I will most humbly take my leave of you. You cannot, sir, take from me anything that I will more willingly part withal. Burn! I like this guy. All right. You're a fishmonger. Okay, that's Hamlet being completely insane. No, Shakespeare can never be insane. He can't do it. There's always got to be meaning in this. And in this case, as somebody noted, the legislation that Burleigh tried to put through about Wednesday being another meatless day is at the root of that illusion. So Friday was traditionally, according to Catholic tradition, a meatless day. It was really supposed to be like fasting, but good God, going without meat on a day, well, that's bad enough. So I am told that beavers were hunted to extinction in England because of that notion of a meatless Friday. And if you've got an relative who is like dyed-in-the-wool Catholic, like my Aunt Marie, you would still get fish sticks to eat on a Friday. You could have fish, but not red meat. So we hadn't really settled on the differences between Protestantism and Catholicism and what's being carried over and what's not. It's the problem with the purgatory issue in this play and so on. But Friday was still sometimes seen as a meatless day. But those people who just can't cope with such a thing decided, well, wait a minute, so we can have fish, right? And they put on their Monty Python thinking caps and realized, all right, where do fish live? In the water. What else lives in the water? Beavers. Beavers are fish. Burn the witch. So that was a bad idea. Anyway, Burleigh decided, hey, Wednesday should be a meatless day too, because he was such a pious guy. No, because he was in the back pocket of the fishing industry and there were secret deals trying to be made, and they would sell more fish if he could pass through this legislation. So Burleigh, you're a fishmonger and not much better. Words, words, words. What are you reading? So the question has long been, what is Hamlet reading? Is there a specific book referred to? And again, Shakespeare is never arbitrary. So the consensus for a long time has been, we've got Cardanus' Comfort here, because the philosophy in that book is very much matching what Hamlet has going on. And that is, like Boethius, what if we approach the problem of the world and evil and punishment and imprisonment and the soul, what if we approach it all without resorting to a religious perspective? Like, oh, the everlasting says I can't commit suicide. Too easy. What if we think it through without that religious dimension? So that philosophy seems to be reflected in the play here. And in fact, Cardano, the writer of this work, in 1573, the 23-year-old de Vere commissioned a translation for the thing. The work was dedicated to him, and he wrote a lengthy introduction and a prefatory poem filled with Shakespearean-like phrases too. So it worked for the traditional Shakespeareans, it works for Oxfordians, and recently Earl Showerman has said, yeah, but there's material in there that works quite well for the juvenile 10th satire too, when it comes to the features of old age and men. So is that the book instead? It's an alternate view. I'd say ultimately it's probably a legitimate supplemental view because Shakespeare is usually doing two things at least at once. Okay, then some Rosencrantz and Guildenstern nonsense again. Hamlet has another soliloquy where he reflects on humankind, and he's getting a little bit more responsible and abstract about his speculations. But Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in, and he has some moments with them. He tells them, I am but mad north-northwest. When the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw. So he may be just hinting that he's not really insane, but it certainly sounds insane. And if you report this and quote this back to Claudius, it's going to sound crazy. I am but mad north-northwest. Well, the Earl of Oxford lost a ton of money, 3,000 ducats. Oh, excuse me, pounds, by investing in this north-northwest passage where we were going to find one of those northwest routes to China, the east. But all the investors lost tons, but especially the Earl of Oxford. So that would make him crazy in further financial disasters. I am but mad north-northwest. There's another unexplained reference to north-northwest that comes from Chaucer's studies, where in the Parliament of Fowls, there's the reference to Venus, both the planet and the goddess, being north-northwest. And the puzzle for Chaucerians is, yeah, but from England, Venus is never seen north-northwest. So what's Chaucer on about? Never been solved. So in other words, we have a playwright supplying an inexplicable reference borrowed from a poet and his inexplicable reference. So that's good. As for the second part, when the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw. Well, I think most of us could distinguish between a hawk flying around and a little saw when we need to chop down some trees. But for the Elizabethans, a hawk was also a term for a woodworking tool. And the handsaw might be a way of pronouncing Hernshaw, which is a bird. So Hamlet, all right, I'm out of Tylenol here. Hamlet knows the difference between a bird tool and a tool bird versus a tool bird and a bird tool. Got it? All right. So the traveling players are announced. There's this troupe of players coming, and Hamlet is absolutely elated by the prospect of this and shows them the greatest respect. He is said to greet them with the courtesy of the true aristocrat. His friendliness is easy and spontaneous, without descending to familiarity. His graciousness is never patronizing, but he's clearly in one of his manic phases, which is a delight to see. And he respects these people who were considered second or third class citizens at the time, the players. So here's Hamlet and the so-called first player, the first actor, in this joyous scene.
I heard thee speak me a speech once, but it was never acted, or if it was, not above once. For the play I remember pleased not the million, but was caviar to the general. But it was as I received it, and others, whose judgment in such matters cried in the top of mine, an excellent play, well digested in the scenes, set down with as much modesty as cunning. I remember one said, there were no salads in the lines to make the matter savoury, nor no matter in the phrase that might indict the author of affectation, but called it an honest method, as wholesome as sweet, and by very much more handsome than fine. Oh, one speech in it I chiefly loved. 'Twas Aeneas' tell to Dido, and thereabout of it especially, where he speaks of Priam's slaughter. Oh, if it live in your memory, begin at this line. Let me see. The rugged Pyrrhus, like the Hyrcanian beast. Tis not so. It begins with Pyrrhus. The rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arms, black as his purpose, did the night resemble when he lay couched in the ominous halls, hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal. Head to foot, now he is total ghouls, horridly tricked with blood of fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, baked and impasted with the parching streets, that lend a tyrannous and damned light to their lord's murder. Roasted in wrath and fire, and thus or sighs with coagular gore, with eyes like carbuncles, the hellish Pyrrhus, old grandsire Priam seeks. So, proceed you.
Oh God, my lord, well spoken, with good accent and good discretion.
Anon he finds him, striking too short at Greeks. His antic sword, rebellious to his arm, lies where it falls repugnant to command. Unequal matched, Pyrrhus at Priam drives, in rage strikes wide. But with the whiff and wind of his fell sword, the unnerved father falls. Then senseless Ilium, seeming to feel this blow, with flaming top stoops to his base, and with a hideous crash takes prisoner Pyrrhus' ear. Below, his sword, which was declining on the milky head of Reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So as a painted tyrant Pyrrhus stood, and like a neutral to his will and matter, did nothing. But, as we often see against some storm, a silence in the heavens, the rack, the bold wind speechless, and the orb below as hush as death. Anon the dreadful thunder doth rend the region, so after Pyrrhus' pause, aroused vengeance sets him new a work, and never did the Cyclops' hammers fall on Mars his armour forged for profit turn. With less remorse than Pyrrhus' bleeding sword now falls on Priam. Out, out, thou strumpet fortune, all you gods in general synod, take away her power, break all the spokes and fellies from her wheel, and bowl the round nave down the hill of heaven, as low as to the fiends.
This is too long.
Shut to the barbers with your beard. Prithee, say on. He's for a jig or a tale of bawdry, or he sleeps. Say on, come to Hecuba.
But who, oh who, had seen the moblet queen?
A moblet queen?
That's good. Moblet queen is good.
Run barefoot up and down, threatening the flames with bison wound, flout upon that head where late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her lank and all her timid loins, a blanket. In the alarm of fear caught up, who this had seen, with tongue in venom steeped, 'gainst fortune's state would treason have pronounced. But if the gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with his sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamour that she made, unless things mortal move them not at all, would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven, and passion in the gods.
Look, where he hath not turned his colour, and has tears in eyes. Prithee no more.
'Tis well. I'll have thee speak out the rest soon. Good my lord, will you see the players well bestowed? Do you hear? Let them be well used, for they are the abstract and brief chronicles of the time. After your death you had better have a bad epitaph than their ill report while you live.
My lord, I will use them according to their desert.
God's bodkin man, much better. Use every man after his desert, and who shall escape whipping? Use them after your own honour and dignity. The less they deserve, the more merit is in your bounty. Take them in.
Obviously, Hamlet wanted a scene from wherever we could get it, classical mythology, of a queen who's absolutely emotionally devastated by the murder of her husband, something that Hamlet has not gotten in this lifetime. the abstract and brief chronicles of the time suggests that if you want the truth, you better look at the arts, reflecting what actually was going on in people's lives. Because history, who writes that? In our case, it was Burleigh's appointed historian to write the history of the Elizabethan period with supplies given by Burleigh. And boy, are we missing a lot of letters from and to the Earl of Oxford. His paper trail was wiped out. And you know, what comes down to us historically is that Lord Burleigh really was a swell guy and such a patriot and so pious, and he saved the country and he did everything. Well, at the end there, Hamlet asks that Polonius treat these players well, and Polonius says, I'll treat them like they deserve, second-class citizens. Hamlet saying, much better, use every man after his desert, and who should escape whipping, use them after your own honor and dignity, the less they deserve, the more merit is in your bounty. And you may ask yourself, who ever says anything like that? And the answer is Jesus. This is the guy I want as king. Well, afterwards, he asks the first player there, the first actor, could I supply you with a few lines to add to a play that you've done, The Murder of Gonzago? And could you add those in, like 12 to 16 lines? And so when we get the play within the play next time, we wonder, what are the lines that Hamlet might have added in there? And we're looking for 12 to 16. No, come on, it's Hamlet. It's going to be like 47 more lines, please. But they'll do it, and they're going to play this. Well, Hamlet then has another bit of time alone, and he considers the implications of what he's just seen in terms of acting, in terms of it creating a reaction and emotions in the viewers. And so this has got to be central to Shakespeare himself. That's what he devoted his life to, presenting some material that has an effect and means something. So here's one of Hamlet's soliloquies right after that scene.
I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it hath no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tent him to the quick. If he but blench, I know my course. The spirit that I have seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape, yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king.
So somehow that's the plan. Whether it holds up in a court of law, I'm not sure. But the speculations about what's Hecuba to him and he to Hecuba, that's interesting. And in fact, this is what Shakespeare also devoted his art to. The relevance of these ancient materials or old stories isn't just because they're good for you and your ancestors knew about them too, but it's always got to be about the relevance. And old stories become allegory for your traumas and miseries and the ways you try to find your way through life. But that brings us to the end of Act 2 and closer to the center of the play. In the beginning of Act 3, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are blabbing with Claudius and Gertrude and still thinking there's something ominous in Hamlet's turbulent and dangerous lunacy. But maybe we can sneak around and hide and spy on, because we didn't get to that plot about having Ophelia be the bait, and we can see what happens between Ophelia and Hamlet. But before any of that, we get a pretty famous bit. You may have heard about this one scene or seen a version of it in any number of contexts. So here it is. We're at the big one now. This next scene of Hamlet speculating.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep, no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks of flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep a chance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long a life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns the patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of? Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with a pale cast of thought. An enterprise of great pith and moment, with this regard their currents, turn awry, and lose the name of action.
Now, if I am seeing correctly, I think most of the voting is going towards B. Oh no, we're not stopping here. Yes, I'm afraid it is to be. So next week, we'll see how this all turns out, and I'll bring the mop. Hang out for a Q&A after I give some thanks, especially to our actors. So Costa Chard, one of our perennial favorites as Hamlet. This guy is an absolute prince elsewhere too. Richard Clifford is the best Polonius I've ever seen. Right? Annabelle Levinton, unusually heartbreaking Gertrude, and we'll get more of her in that regard next week. Michael Dudley as Claudius, boo, but really effective. Phoebe Neer giving us the plethora of Ophelia's emotions, more to come. And with special guest star Charles Beauclerc, who is a descendant in the de Vere line, in fact, as our first actor. The Ghost, it's a mystery. And special thanks to Jennifer Newton for illuminating Shakespeare Illuminated. Now, let's see what has come about in Q&A. The Vere cousins, Francis Vere and Horace, in this play, maybe Horatio and Francisco, are acknowledged, I do think is true. Why did Claudius think he was entitled to take the throne upon the death of Hamlet Sr.? Wasn't Hamlet the son and heir? And this is troubling also. Hamlet will, in a future moment, say, I lack advancement. Now, we're told, we get various stories on this. We're told that it's not entirely unusual. I think Isaac Asimov tries to insist that this might have been a way it's done, but it is troubling because it seems like there's no reason that Hamlet shouldn't take the throne. Is it the parallel to the Earl of Oxford, 17th, not being allowed to take his own estates when the 16th Earl dies? That Hales versus Pettit case, we'll talk about that next time when it comes to the graveyard scene. And is the sable beard possibly a reference to the Earl's colors, sable and tawny? Hey, sable and isn't it darker than sable? I'm not sure. Where's the tawny part? And then you got me. I would think maybe so. And also, we just don't really know for certain what we're seeing when we get images of the 17th Earl. There's the famous one where a lot of people think, no, it's the 16th Earl. And possibly he's too young to have his sable beard. I don't know what to say about that one. Is this the time being out of joint, being stated both in the lives of de Vere and the state, shaking off of the old faith? Yeah, it is. And the time is out of joint, as we see in other plays, because of that reluctance of England to adopt the new calendar. So you see that in Julius Caesar. And I think there is a double time going on in A Midsummer Night's Dream, too. And things are out of joint, especially concerning time, again and again in the Shakespeare plays. So it could be both political and cosmological, calendrical, and so on. This sounds like Portia, the bit where Hamlet says, he is every man after his own desert, and who should escape whipping. It does sound like there is a pitch for tolerance and kindness and humanity. Sounds like Portia. Wait till you hear me rail about her hypocrisy. It might sound like her, and the quality of mercy is not strained. Yeah, well, let's see it in action. You're going to give this, Hamlet does, and Portia, where's her mercy when it comes down to it? Could it be that de Vere's stepfather wanted to usurp the Earl's inheritance? Yeah, it could be, except his life is so much at court then. And so maybe what I might also have said is that there doesn't seem to be much interaction, especially affectionate interaction, between the 17th Earl and his mother. So all we've got is that she writes a letter or two to Lord Burleigh, and it really has nothing to do with how's my son and, give him my best or anything like that. So it's absolute coldness there, as if he didn't really accept her as his mother, and that the fact that she remarried very quickly after the death of the 16th Earl, that can explain some of the trauma in Hamlet, but does it really answer it? Because it seems like it's more of a factoid than an emotion. And it seems like it has more to do with what's going on at court than the background where cold mom doesn't really matter. And cold mom, where are the mothers in Shakespeare? There aren't a lot of them, and the couple that do show up and haven't been killed off, like in Taming of the Shrew and all the motherless characters, when they do show up, they're kind of weird, like Mrs. Macduff. So motherhood is an odd concern for Shakespeare repeatedly. Better a bad epitaph. Is De Vere reconciling himself to a false, belittling report after death and a wounded name? Yeah, well, we'll talk about the wounded name and the death afterwards. But yeah, better a better epitaph, a bad epitaph. And it's who you want to be remembering you. And if it's the historians and the engravers of your tombstone, what is that worth? But if it is people who you were kind with in your life and they remember you, that is a kind of a super religion that the ancients thought. We all go down to the house of death. We all go down to the underworld, and you could be a fine person and a crappy person or whatever, but you're all going to end up the same. The only thing you got going for you is if you leave a name for yourself, if you have fame in this world. So warrior religions, the Anglo-Saxons, the Greeks, warrior religions will say that you have to leave a good memory. As long as people remember you, then you exist. When they've forgotten you, you're gone. So not too many of us remember our great-grandparents or our great-great-grandparents, and maybe they're ready for reincarnation now that they're not remembered or something. But to be remembered by people you were kind to and who are going to say something nice to you, no doubt Shakespeare feels is better than getting acknowledged in the dictionary of national biography, where somebody's going to take swipes at you, or Wikipedia. Hamlet's complaint that Claudius popped in between him and the succession also harked back to Oxford's ever ill luck in the voting for Knight of the Garter. It might, although I think at a certain point, Oxford just wasn't into the politics and the honors and all that junk anymore. He thought that Philip Sidney was a carpet, whatever it's called, carpet warrior or carpet something, because it was an honorary thing. And when he goes to Italy, he's interested in the arts, in the theater, in the music. And is he eavesdropping on political ceremonies and what the Doge is doing in the Council of Ten? I can't imagine that he had a lot of tolerance for all of that. So I don't know that that's one of his traumas, that, he was slighted in the Knight of the Garter proposals. But maybe. I don't know. I just can't tell. I mean, what have I not been voted for? All kinds of things. I don't need more stuff on my walls. For me, the play in the nutshell is about moral man trying to navigate an immoral world. Would you agree? Yeah, absolutely. And you can frame this in a number of ways. You can frame it as somebody who comes out of the medieval notion, not an old-fashioned notion, but the notion of noblesse oblige, that you have an obligation as being a noble towards those less fortunate, and you take care of them. Not that you con them out of the little money they got to foster your own schemes and increase your power. So there's that aspect of it. There's the aspect of being young and defiant and knowing that the world is corrupt and just not being able to take it and being driven to the brink of suicide because 40 years from now, it's not going to be any better, and you're just going to start getting diseases that are going to cost you too much too. So yeah, it is about a moral man trying to navigate an immoral world, or a fine, intellectual, brilliant young man surrounded by dumbasses and scummy people. All right, sorry, too self-revealing. How does the early dating references and the politics of the late 1580s relate? Bevington, Bullock, and others have tied the early Hamlet with the plight of Mary, Queen of Scots. Have they indeed? Well, Earl, I don't know. I haven't seen that kind of stuff lately, and it didn't register if from Bevington I should know, but I don't know. And on the spur of the moment, I couldn't tell you. So wait a minute. If you type a bit into the chat about that, maybe I can still field it before we're done with our session today. Yeah, and there are a number of comments in the chat that relate to what for us is going to be the second half of the play. So, stabbing people and rats and so on, you'll get your time, and it will be in joint then. All right. Well, if there's anything I missed, I will have an opportunity to reconsider it in this next week as we prepare for part 2. So I'm going to wrap up here. Again, you can plunge further into the Oxfordian perspective on the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship website. That's shakespeareoxfordfellowship.org, where you'll also find all manner of resources and links, and I think some hilarious videos. For most of my commentary today, and there is more too, that it's just infinite, says Harold Bloom. You can visit my website, michaeldelahoyde.org. You'll also find suggested further reading, a slightly annotated filmography, which is especially long with Hamlet. The Hamlets I've been watching, and other information. If you're watching this on YouTube, links to more information are in the description. Again, Hamlet, the exciting exiting conclusion, next week. Thank you very much to the friends of Shakespeare Illuminated.